creating these cityscapes from that. This is the work which I'm sort of playing around with at the moment. It's very much about sort of urban planning, how people think about how spaces should work. And I guess that's what my work is very much about, how people might think about spaces and places work, how they might work, and just creating this feedback loop. I suppose like some of the other members of the panel, we're putting digital into physical and then back into digital and hopefully thinking differently about both. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Javier Candeira, visual aid, and I'm the assistant curator of a space in Madrid called Matadero. It means abattoir or slaughterhouse. It's one of those old industrial spaces converted into art spaces. And there we have a games and play program called Something for Good. We're going to talk to you about some of the research we've done. And I'm not going to show you any of the works we've shown there. The first photograph I have, in fact, it's not of Madrid, but of Barcelona. It's in front of the Museum of Contemporary Art, where people skate. If you've been there, you'll see that they're the politest skaters in the world. And one of the reasons is that they are in very good terms with the city of Barcelona. There's a story, I don't know how apocryphal it is, that Richard Meyer, the architect of the museum, which is kind of a brutalist piece, looks like it dropped from space, you know, in one piece. It's white and it's shiny. It looks like perfect. And he didn't like skaters skating around his beautiful sculpture of a building. So what the institutions did, what the directors of the museum did, was the first exhibition shown at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Barcelona, before the museum opened, was an exhibition, a show on skateboarding. Play not only defines physical space and city space, but if you let it, it can also define public policy. And apparently it was public policy to be for the people and let people do whatever uses they wanted of public space instead of kind of prescribe the uses they can do and they can't do. I think that's very cool. And it's very cool that an arts institution did. The second example I have is a fantastic guerrilla work by Andrew Chauvin of Grey World in London. This is actually in Paris. And I say guerrilla work because this is work that wasn't commissioned and that in fact it was installed without the knowledge of public officials of Paris. These are fences. This may be in London, by the way, but the original was done in Paris. These are fences, and you know this game that kids do, running with a stick, making the bars rattle. Andrew tuned the bars, so when you run a stick through them, it played the girl from Ipanema. And, you know, this is the easiest laugh I've ever had because it works with every audience. And the time I had Andrew tell it, everybody was laughing for like so long. He did it, you know, think of it. He did it in the act, in the street, without any authorization. You know, think of the time it takes to tune a whole banister. Apparently, you know, as the bars become broken and they get fixed, the music degrades. So the funny thing is that this is now being used in Japan to get people to drive at the correct speed. They make speed bumps that kind of make a nice tone, but only if you're driving at the right speed. So playful intervention in public space fixes uses and also makes what we could call virtuous uses. Another example of this kind of screwing the minds of officials is this architect Santiago Ciruqueda in Spain. This is, I believe, in Seville. So Santiago Ciruqueda likes to ask for permissions to do things and then do something that the permission didn't originally intended. Like, you look, this looks like a skip. It has the shape of a skip. And indeed, Santiago asked the city for permission to put it in a skip. And you know, a skip is part of an industrial and building and commercial activity that creates an eyesore. It's what's called, you know, it's a negative outcome of this activity that is good for whoever's doing the renovation, but it's bad for the neighborhood. So what Santiago did was an art intervention in the city that creates a positive outcome, which is these children who normally don't have a seesaw to play with suddenly have one. By the way, people denounced that and said, oh no, this isn't according to code. And Santiago proved with the papers that nothing in the code say that you can't have one. It has the shape, it has everything is contained within, it's safe, and of course the people in the neighborhood were like, what do you mean? It's better than a skip. So that's again play, intervening, in this case through art and through art funding. He had funding from art, but of course the people from the city didn't know that there was, you know, it's like warring organizations of public funding. One is the city, and the other one is the art funding that Santiago got to do this, and they don't know like that at loggerheads. I think that's funny. The next two examples are here in Melbourne. This is called the Enforcer. It looks like it should have, you know, a rocket launcher. And you see another version hanging from bridges overseas. It basically tells you what speed you're going unless you're going too fast. Then it tells you not to go that fast. This says thank you because the last person who passed through was under the speed limit. The funny thing is when I wrote to the people, I said I'd like to see ones with speed under the limit and speed over the limit. They said we don't do speed over the limit because we don't want to give people the incentive to go faster. We tell them when they go slower, and they figured that, you know, I don't drive much, but people do this kind of game because every time we see a number, we think it's a score or it's some kind of gauge. And I don't know if you do it, but if you're going down the bridge, what I guess I would do is, okay, I'm still not going at the top limit and kind of accelerate a bit till I get at that speed. So this is the Enforcer, and it joins with something else that I've taken. This picture is you know, where punt becomes hobble. This is by Richmond Station, and it tells you not only that you need to save water, it tells you how much water we as Melburnians are spending. The only thing that we can see is one is animated, and when it says used, it says 134 litres per household per week. Again, I see this as a kind of social game. So we get, of course, this is called in psychology and public policy, they're called nudges. The things that make us more virtuous, to make us follow a better policy for everyone. But when you get your own invoice, you get your invoice for your household, and in many cases that doesn't give you the right nudge. Why? If you're sharing a house with 3 other people, if you have 3 kids, couple with 3 kids, they're already over the limit. Same for someone living alone and spending half the time at, you know, his or her boyfriend, girlfriend. They're already under the limit. These people, the personal consumption of water tells them nothing about what behavior they should have. But when we have this social thing, we're already under the limit. But you know, the numbers are not good. Reservoirs are 37%. As a group, we have we get this idea, this nudge, that we should be using a little less water, even if our individual reservoir invoice doesn't tell us so. So the thought after these 5 slides, which are all I had, is that, you know, when, what was it, EVE Online, I think, and many other massively multiplayer games started having economics. The companies running them started hiring economists so they could run the economies. The more we realize that public policy, public behavior, our use of public space are based on human activities of play and games, the more we might end up realizing that we might need to hire game designers to design better uses of this public space, of public resources, and better adhesion to public policy, making it fun. Thank you very much.
So I'm an artist and academic that works with digital games and digital spaces. Interested primarily in the languages of those spaces. I'm based at Monash University in a research centre called the Centre for Electronic Media Art. So, what I'm going to start out with today is talking an example of a practice that I evolved during the 90s, which was centred on building digital worlds populated by artificial life that communicate using languages constructed from digital media. And so this project here on the screen is an example of one of those works, which is called Semiomorph. And in this game, the idea was to subvert a familiar game space that is a kind of first-person shooter by connecting a kind of a representational system to that game space. In this case, this was an idea from computer science called semiotic morphism. So the space would change according to how it was played. I won't go into the rules, but there were rules connected to the representation and actions of the players that would switch it between words, diagrams, icons, and simulations. So it was this kind of shifting space. But the other thing that I experimented with on this project, and this was maybe about a decade ago, was translating that digital game space into an actual one-to-one model or representation in an art gallery. So this kind of tiny little slide you see down the bottom here was a shot. It was a kind of translation of that game space into one-to-one model in an art gallery space. So the same kind of components, the same language, the same characters could be experienced with materiality, could be experienced with kind of the physical presence of existing in reality. So this was a kind of rediscovering of reality for myself. And more recently, sort of spent more or less a decade immersed in digital spaces. And for myself, it was a kind of personal rediscovering of reality. And in fact, a friend of mine has recently kind of started calling me a reality newbie, because I have kind of this new kind of found enthusiasm for experiencing real spaces. And one of the kind of projects that came out of this was this concept for a micronation, which was built on the concept of a world literally made of clay. So here's some images from the micronation of Ludea, which is a world that exists in between digital space and real spaces, that has a language, culture, society, currency, kind of all the components you expect from a nation or a fledgling nation, but they're inspired by processes of play. So the citizens of this world don't make their kind of laws and systems and behaviour and so forth from kind of the kind of traditional systems that we're used to using, but rather through playing games. It could be as simple as rock, paper, scissors, or games of tag, but all of their kind of decision making, all of their kind of life kind of processes and so forth are based in gaming, or kind of the play of games. And actually this is an interesting connection to the keynote presentation this morning, where it was pointed out that a lot of these institutional systems actually kind of originated through play. Like the argument basically was that all of human culture is all through play, which is quite interesting in relation to this concept of a new world based on play. So this project, in a more practical sense, was a way to translate the iconography and language and so forth that are involved in digital realms into a context in which it could coexist with familiar spaces, such as here you can see the city of Melbourne. So in this work from 2005, a series of images, videos, artifacts, sculptures and so forth were constructed that gave presence to this micronation of Ludea in a familiar context, which was the city of Melbourne. And so the project here had very simple rules. Essentially, different locations were found and then remapped with this language. So that all kind of references to any kind of alphabet-based languages were erased from the images and replaced with these generative digital languages.